Start recording now.
On virtual NA groups and service. Thank you, the Bronx website committee and the area service committee for hosting it. We're going to cover suggestions for groups and service, H&I, regional/area multi-host Zoom setups, which we called in the East New York region, we called it a virtual group starter kit. Virtual 7th tradition I'm going to touch on for a little bit real quick. And the meeting list and the BMLT website, how all that works. So, first, suggestions on the platforms. I've heard some people talk about, there's two different platforms out there that have been used by Narcotics Anonymous groups. They are Zoom and Blue Jeans, okay? Just really quick, I have not used Blue Jeans as thoroughly as I've used Zoom, but I did do some trial runs and some tests, and I noticed some issues with them. Zoom in and of itself is a complicated system, okay? I am an IT person professionally. Thanks to many years clean in Narcotics Anonymous, I was able to, have a career in computing. So I understand this stuff, and I've been able to utilize that knowledge to help facilitate the use of Zoom. But it is a complicated setup. There's also no disconnect timeout with it, which is kind of something that I really don't like. The reason why that's important, I'll get into later when we get into the setup and how the groups operate on a multi-host account. Tech support is non-existent. A lot of stuff I had to figure out on my own. I put tech support requests in. Zoom did not respond. And that's also because we have some of the basic accounts. If you get a higher level account, you get access to their phone support, but they don't provide any phone support for the lower level accounts, even though you're paid for account. There's many options for a virtual setup. Zoom is very versatile. It has a variety of different features that you could turn on and off, which was not available in Blue Jeans. Also, it has better room security. One of the things that I found out, Blue Jeans is working on it, but every participant in Blue Jeans, if you notice on the other side when I get to that end, every participant in a room can share screen, can use whiteboarding and annotations. That's every person in the room, not just the co-host or host, which is one of the security features we can set up in Zoom. And also it has a larger room capacity. Zoom, for its price, allows 100 room for a base account, paid for base account. And up to 300 if you go to the next level, which is a 10-host account. Probably not applicable to Bronx area, but maybe. But to the region, we are looking at it in the Eastern New York region. And then every meeting becomes a 300 participant meeting. You get the Blue Jeans, their base account starts at 50 participants per meeting. They go up to 75 when you get to a slightly higher priced account. Which is more expensive. The base account is cheaper than the base account for Zoom, but then that 75 participant room is a little bit more than the base cost of Zoom. Zoom is 15, the base account of Blue Jean is like 13, and then I think like 18, 17 and a half or something like that for the 75 participant room. So the cost could be more depending on the meeting feeds and how you set it up. They both have the interconnectivity that I'm going to talk about in the multi-host account. So both could technically be used, but like I said, I still recommend Zoom because of that, allowing screen sharing, some of the security features, limited host controls. It does have the limited disconnect timeout, which is something I wish Zoom would have. And their tech support was awesome. I was able to get through to their tech support even though I was on a trial account. And they answered my questions and stuff like that. So as an IT guy, I appreciate that. But like I said, I still do recommend Zoom. I figured out most of the things that we need to know for Narcotics Anonymous and how to run groups and meetings. I'm going to start with the H&I thing that was on the agenda. In the Eastern New York region in Nassau, I'm a panel coordinator for one of the facilities. So when this happened and we weren't allowed in the facilities, I wasn't going to wait to carry the message. They still had clients in there, and I followed what I consider to be the proper channels. We had the waiting for a physical meeting to start, and just in general, at this point, is not realistic in my opinion. H&I will be virtual for some time to come. So if you want to be carrying the message into these facilities, you're going to have to find a way to make that work. They're not going to allow people to come in until they have a reliable way to test us, to know that we're not bringing in anything. And I don't see that happening anytime soon. So, and people that I've spoken to who are in the professional field echo that, so it's going to be some time before we can have a physical face-to-face meeting in these facilities. So in turn, what I did is I contacted my PR, Public Relations Committee in Nassau. The contact person I had at the facility was not being responsive. And then we also have a hospital too. And we followed that same protocol. We went through PR initially. They reached out to the facility. We sent a letter, faxed it, made phone calls until we got a response. So we got somebody on the phone that could actually make decisions. And when you get to the administrator or somebody who's in a position to make these calls as to whether and how we can have H&I in the facility, first thing you got to do is find out what they're capable of. Many of the facilities are on tight budgets. They don't have some of the hardware that you're looking to do a Zoom meeting. But at least they may have a phone. In the hospital, I'll go back to the first facility. In the first facility, which is a crisis center, I donated them an iPad. Well, actually lent them one for right now. I mean, I intend to get it back when this whole thing is over. But I had an iPad. It was cell-enabled. I made it really simple for them. The administrator was a little hesitant at first, but she loves it now. And they use that to have a virtual H&I meeting. We've been doing that since April. In the hospital now, though, they were closed for some time in April. They just recently reopened the detox and the rehab. They have a whole floor and this whole bureaucracy. So initially, right now, we're starting with phone conferencing only. It's still going to be a Zoom meeting. And the facility is going to dial in. They found a way to put a phone in the room. It's going to be on speakerphone, and we're going to start carrying the message that way to eventually get to some sort of a video setup. We still don't know how that's going to happen. Like I said, there was issues with HIPAA, possible problems and stuff like that. But you got to let the hospital make their own decisions, or whatever facility that it is, whatever they're comfortable with. And I've told them, too, if they're uncomfortable with the video end on their end, that doesn't matter in what I feel we need to do, which is them seeing us. So I already said to them, I said, you don't need to have the camera on your end. As long as they can see us and we bring the meeting in and we carry the message, I think that's the best we could possibly do right now. So there's a lot of stuff in Nassau. We did authorize the purchase of hardware where necessary. Some people donated hardware, iPads, laptops. There's a variety of different ways these things can be set up, and I'm more than willing to talk to anybody in H&I who's in a position to have these conversations and go over it. And I did, as a matter of fact, with the Western Queens H&I chair recently. So if you have somebody who's involved in H&I and wants to get more information on what we're doing, what can be done, how it can be done, just call me and reach out, and I'll go over it. So that pretty much covers the H&I segment. To the Eastern New York Region's Virtual Group Starter Kit. Okay, this is a calendar of the current meetings that I have running. These are running on a 6-host account in Zoom. Everything is interconnected, and all the meetings take place on different hosts based on their time. The bulk of the time, what happens with this is that you have to pay attention to your evening meetings. That's where the bulk of our meetings happen, and that pretty much determines the size of the account that you're looking to get. Also, the account could be grown as necessary. When we started this in March, at the end of March, I put in the motion at the region to be able to get from 3 to 6 hosts on Zoom. I kind of knew how I was going to need to do it. I was going to start out with 3. I immediately went to 4. I didn't get to 5 and 6 until in May, at the beginning of May. So that's how I grew it. This way I kept the cost down. I didn't buy more than I needed. You can add as you need, and you can also take away too. Like if at some point, if you do this as a service going forward, you can go up to 8, and then in 2-3 months from now, if as the situations change and meetings go back to meeting regularly and maybe they don't want to do a virtual anymore, you could reduce that number of hosts and go back down to 6 or whatever you need. So like I said, this is about 50 meetings a week running on the account. Like I said, it's a 6-host account. Everything is interlinked. What I mean by that is that I can manage the entire account through one login into Zoom. It does take some setup, and all the security settings are also controlled by the owner's account. In Zoom, the way it works basically is there's one account that's the owner, and then there's the licenses that are issued below that, okay? Everybody gets a host key. The host key, I'm going to go into more detail in a minute. Basically, that allows me to not have to do anything. The host key is like the key to the church. It's no different than issuing a key to the church, where people can come in and the trusted servants of the group have that key, and they're able to come into the room, open up the meeting, become a host, and do what's necessary to run the meeting. I don't need to do anything else but schedule the meeting for them and give them the information necessary to run it. You know, like I try to help them out where I can. There's no meetings can overlap at the same time on the same host. And if you look at this list here, if you can see it clearly, I don't know how well you guys can see it on your end, but you can see it lists, this is hosted by Alyssa W. One of the people that was helping me out. I used her email. She's one of the licensed people on the account. She can also log in and schedule meetings if necessary for any other host. Okay, so this is kind of how it works. Like I can, as the website admin, I can come in, I can schedule a meeting and look at the space that's available, and I can see that, you know, Alyssa doesn't have anything, you know, in the afternoon. So I could schedule a meeting for her in the afternoon, you know. And you see each host is listed here. Anyone that doesn't have a host name, by the way, under it is myself. I'm logged in as the Eastern webmaster here. So you can see that each one listed out. You can see the times. This is actually today and tomorrow. This is actually current. This is what's going to be running from today and tomorrow on the Eastern New York Region website. These are the other things. These are the users. They're all licensed, as you can see. There's one owner account, and then the rest are listed as admin accounts. The owner account, like I said, controls a little bit more than the admin accounts, where the owner account can set the security preferences and everything for all of the other hosts licensed on the account. So it is a little different, and that's where you do the primary setup and security setup. Each time you add a host, you just have to have another email address. And you sign that email address in, you create a Zoom account, you link it into the account, and then there's some interconnectivity that needs to be done. I don't want to get too geeky on you guys, but there's some settings that you set which basically allow that new email registered user to schedule for everybody else, and you can schedule for them. And the only other thing you really need to do is set their host key. One of the things I did is I set the host key for every single person on this account to be the same. That pretty much stayed consistent for a little bit until one meeting asked if I could have an alternate host key for them. Whatever the host key is for the host for that licensed account is the host key that they would use to open up the meeting. I don't recommend having multiple host keys. The primary purpose of it is to make it as simple as possible, and it's going to get very confusing to the person who manages it to keep track of which meeting has which host key. I have 2 currently right now, and that's it. And the one, like I said, is only for very specific meetings, and it's one particular host where I have an alternate host key. But otherwise, it's all the same. The other thing to the right, these are the important, really important settings for Zoom to make sure you don't get Zoom bombed. Primarily, the way not to get Zoom bombed is have a password on all your meetings. It's not like we're trying to keep people out. Our information is public. It's on the website. You put that information there. The link that you put on the website also can be a one-click link, which means it has the password incorporated in it. So you don't need to worry about like the password being not there, not available, people can't get in. So the purpose of it, though, is to prevent Zoom bombers from coming in. The way that they come in, they're not hacking, they're not doing anything in particular. What they're doing is they're using an auto dialer and literally looking for Zoom meetings that are open. They will have a program running on their computer that will go to Zoom and tell it to dial a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 number and enter. If there's a meeting there and there's a password, it ignores it. But if there's a meeting there and there's no password, it logs it. That person comes back to the account, to their computer, like whatever, 15, 20 minutes later, has a list of meetings that have no password, and then they come in and harass you. So that's the main reason to have a password to avoid it. You don't necessarily need it. The security settings are there in place. These are the security settings, like screen sharing. If you have that open, they will come in and they will use it. This is set up where it is available, but only to the host and co-host, even though it says host only. It does mean co-host also. Disabling the desktops and screen sharing for all users. Annotations, which is something where you could draw on the screen, and whiteboarding are turned off, and remote control options. You don't want anybody trying to take control of somebody else's computer in our meetings. There's a bunch of other security settings. I didn't want to get into too much, but this is the primary ones that we need to have off and in control so that the meeting can be maintained and an atmosphere of recovery can be maintained in the meeting. Host key. Back to this again. The host key is, like I said, the way that any trusted servant of a group or a service body can claim host. Okay? This allows the Zoom administrator to simply give out 6-digit number instead of any of the Zoom account information. You want to protect that information because when you're coming in and you log in as the owner or any one of those admins, unless you lock the things down, they can see billing information. They're able to do certain things in the account that you don't necessarily want a general person to be able to do. So protecting the login information for the actual Zoom account is important. The host key gives you a way to allow anybody to run a meeting that you schedule on your account without giving them that account information. And those people who do have the host account information inside Zoom can come in and also claim host and do any of that stuff if there's a problem, if it has an issue or something like that. Any one of the administrators can log in, come into that meeting, reclaim the host, and pass it to whoever has to get it and help with problems. But overall, initially, the first couple of weeks that I did this, there was a lot of work. But once people got trained, once people understood how it worked, I've had very little phone calls at all since mid-April. I mean, there's one here and there, an occasion, where a meeting has a particular issue, but for the most part, there isn't. The key should only be shared on a limited basis and only with members that are going to host, people that need it, and they're going to be able to start the meeting. Once the host is claimed, that person can pass the host on to anyone else too, and they can make any number of co-hosts. I do recommend that you have a co-host in every one of your meetings. Reason being is if you get disconnected and you're the only host in the room, the host will get passed to somebody randomly. Okay, it's kind of technically the first person in the room after you or whatever. I'm not going to get too, once again, geeky about it. But if you're the only host in the room and you use the host key to claim it, that option to claim host will not appear again. Once it appears once and you claim it, at that point, it will cycle the host to another person if you get disconnected for whatever reason. So have a co-host, because the co-host will become the host if you get disconnected. So it should also be somebody who understands how to at least pass co-host and host to somebody else. The option to do this on a smartphone or a tablet is there, but it's not in the participants window. If you look at thing on the right, I show where you can set the host key. It's in your profile when you log in. This really only primarily applies to, I think, Darnell and Anthony, who have access to the Zoom account. But you can edit the host key in item number 2. And then in the participants window, this is what's important for the group people who are going to be hosting a meeting, is that they click item number 3 here, the participants button that's at the bottom of every window when you log into the meeting. First thing that you do when you come in, and then whether you're on a Mac, this is the Mac on, oops, sorry. This is the Mac on the left, and this is on a PC on the right. You should see a claim host button. If you don't see the button, you'll see 3 dots there. And you click on that, and then there'll be an option to claim host. But that's where it is on a PC. On a phone and on a tablet, it is in a slightly different spot. Depends on what platform you're on, Android, iOS, but it's there, okay? So you can claim host from any device. The only exception to that is Chromebook. I have, I think, 2 people who were on Chromebooks, and for some reason, the button's not there. But beyond that, it's on every other major device. So you can claim host from anywhere, and then once you're the host, like I said, you can pass the host to anybody else. You can set co-hosts, and you're able to host the meeting and do things like share screen. Next. Okay, sharing the screen and making bookmarks in the toolbar. Right now, you should be seeing that I'm in a browser. I use Firefox for what I call hosting, my hosting browser. The reason why is because I don't normally use Firefox as my regular browser. I was able to install it clean, and I had a clean top part here. But as you see, all the bookmarks that I have up here are for things related to hosting a meeting. I have a link to the NA literature. I have a link to a hand-raising slideshow that basically teaches people how to raise their hand in a meeting. And I play this usually before the meeting starts. Like, I'll open up the meeting 15 minutes early, and I will turn this slideshow on, and I will walk away, go make some coffee. This way it teaches people how to raise their hand on all different devices. And then we have the readings. I have 2 versions of them. I have this one, which you saw before when we were doing the opening greetings. I have key tags. I have this version of the readings. I have timer cards, which are displayed after the speaker, you're timing them. You can flash this on the screen, and there's several different ones. I linked to the Adjuster Today for when I'm hosting Adjuster Today meeting on the Nassau area website, and I could just put this up on the screen. And then to get fancy, we'll get into the 7th tradition thing, but at the groups that I do service at, we use Venmo, and I have little slide tags like this. All of this information is in an email that I send out to every group that is going to participate. Here. This is a sample of it. I sent it over to Anthony at one point, like a month ago. And basically, it's growing a little bit. It's a little bit more. I have a few more things in it right now, but this is the basic principle of it. When the person who controls the Zoom account schedules the meeting, they get the email address for the group representative or trusted servant that's going to be hosting, and this gives them all that they need to run the meeting. It gives them a quick reference of what the meeting, how to dial into the meeting, what the meeting ID would be if there's a password, and like I said, I do recommend a password, and what the link is to the meeting. The regional host account only information. This is information that should only be shared amongst the trusted service, which has the host key normally in it, and has a very special provision. This particular provision was what I talked about before when I mentioned that BlueJeans has a timeout, Zoom does not. What that means is that people can literally be in a Zoom room, and if they don't log out or don't disconnect, that meeting stays active. This causes problems for groups that are meeting on that same host. Literally, I've had phone calls in the morning, and for somebody who stayed in from the night before, because it was the same host account for one meeting at night. Somebody didn't disconnect, didn't log out, they stayed in. The morning meeting tried to log in, and they got this message saying that the host is currently running another meeting. When that happens, there is a workaround for that. You have to use this method where you dial the telephone number on your phone, not use the Zoom app, dial the telephone number, put in the meeting ID, and enter the host key. That forces the room to open up. This is the workaround for it, and some people don't pay attention to it, but that's a whole other story. One of the most important things that you teach everybody too in terms of their hosting is that they end the meeting for all, okay? When the host is done, the only person who could do this too is a host, not a co-host. A host has the control to end the meeting for all. And I tell all groups that are doing it, whoever the host is, please end the meeting for all, because that alleviates this problem of anybody hanging out in the room. It closes the room, cleans it out, and this way the next meeting can begin. So very important thing to be done. So the other thing here too, back to the bookmarking, this is where I give all the bookmarks out. And basically, I have a link to a variety of different things. There's some Zoom training videos that you can watch, a security video, not that important if you're on a virtual group starter kit like we have at the East New York region, but a link to the virtual meeting list, which I don't know if I have that up, but the virtual group meeting list, this is ours at the East New York region. And to the slideshow, to the hand-raising slider. And then I have a shared Google Drive where I have all these features and more. I even have coins for several years, up to like 1 to 35. I have a bunch of other tools that I've added in here. This is where the readings are also. But basically what you do with the bookmarking and the linking for this, the reading slideshow, that would open up this. Okay, I'm going to go back to Firefox in a second. But what you do is you come to the email. You can right-click or select and copy, whatever you're comfortable with. But I use what's called copy link address. And then in Firefox, I would paste the link up here. And then you can see that this star is already filled in. Normally the star is hollow. You click on it, and then you put this in what's called the bookmark toolbar. That's how I made all of these bookmarks across the top here, by putting them all in the bookmark toolbar. You can also edit the name so that it's shorter. It doesn't need to be like the full name. You can make it references to whatever you want. So this way you can have a lot of links in that top part. If you're a step group, you can link to the introductory guide, which has how it works section out of the basic text. Any other pieces of literature or things that you'd want to share on your screen during your meeting, depending on your format, you can put that all in one browser. And that's what I recommend, is that you use the browser that you don't normally use. Okay, there are 3 main ones on a PC. There's Edge, there's Firefox, and there's Chrome. Whichever one you don't use regularly, they all have the same feature to use the bookmark toolbar. Okay, and you can have these bookmarks listed in there. You can literally sign in to the meeting, launch the browser, and be ready to host a meeting in probably about 30 seconds, and opening up all the little tabs that you need to open up. So once you bookmark it, you put it in the bookmark toolbar. You can rearrange these in any order by dragging and dropping them. Okay, and like I said, once you have that set up, you're pretty much good to go with hosting the meeting. The sharing the screen, because we're in a Zoom meeting, I can't really show you the buttons, but you see them at the bottom of your screen next to the participants window to share screen. When you click on that, the windows you have open on your machine become available. So like I said, Firefox, I see that when I click share screen. I pick that window and I share it. And then you see what I see only in that one application. Okay, it's a per application share. So you're sharing multiple tabs, but one application. So if you wanted to switch, like you saw, in order for me to go back and forth with Chrome, where I had some stuff, to go to Firefox, I have to stop sharing and go back to the other share. That basically covers the bookmarking the screen sharing, and making the bookmarks in the toolbar, and some of the basic features which you have to host. Okay. The other things about room control, like I said, once again, because I can't share the Zoom screen, I'm just going to review them quickly. Basically, in controlling the room and maintaining an atmosphere of recovery, depending on the size of the room, you may want to not allow users to unmute themselves. Okay. This control is available to a host or a co-host when they come in the room. Usually by default, it is on where users can unmute themselves. The host would have to turn that off and basically mute all. And then there's a setting. It's in the participants window under the three dots, which allows them to, like I said, lock the meeting in a way so that, like it is right now, you can't unmute yourself in this meeting. I don't necessarily think you need it in a regular meeting, depending on the size. But if you get into a 100-person room, it's probably a good idea to do it, because people can accidentally unmute themselves, and it is disruptive to the meeting, and it's more work for the host sometimes in a large meeting to keep track of people who are unmuting or muting themselves. They unmute themselves to say hi or, you know, hello to the person that's sharing, and then they get to mute themselves, and then they go make coffee, and you're listening to them make coffee. So the larger the room, the more I recommend it. The smaller the room, not as necessary. The raising and lowering hands, the other thing you do as host. You guys all see that if you bring up the participants window right now, if we had hands raised, if somebody wants to raise their hand as a sample, you can do that. And just show people, a little hand pops up and there you go. Serenity and a couple of other policy chair raise their hand now. You can see their hands up there. We see them as hosts and co-hosts. Only the host and co-host can lower those hands. And if you're in a meeting with muting and unmuting, that's how you basically pick people. The order in which the hands were raised, the one at the top, is the first person to click the button. And it is in order as in which the people raised in their hands, okay? You can also run the meeting, which I have done on occasion, having the speaker pick a show of hands. You know, you don't have to pick them in the order that they were raised. The other settings, like waiting room, you don't really need that on unless you're having a business meeting or something like that, or you know, doing something where you don't want to be disrupted or whatever. But the waiting room, the only reason I could see that you could possibly use it is if you are running a meeting without a password and you're trying to prevent a Zoom bomber from coming in and typing in the chat, which is basically the only thing they could do on our end, or share a virtual background that appears that's inappropriate. You would create a waiting room so that it catches them before they come into the main room. But otherwise, I don't really put the waiting room on. The other thing is allowing people to rename themselves. I always allow people to rename themselves. And I already pretty much went over the allowing to unmute and mute. I train everybody on these accounts. I basically spend time with every GSR or whatever trusted servant that contacted me, or chairperson of the group, and I spent some time with them going over this stuff with them, as well as sending them the email with the links. But once they got used to it and doing it, it's a matter of doing. Like I said, it takes care of itself. I've taught anywhere from the 20-something millennials to the 70-year-old grandmothers who have 30 years clean, and they're hosting meetings. And they're really not that proficient in even checking their email, but they can do it. So anybody can do this. It's just a matter of being patient and figuring it out, just doing it. The more you do it, the better you get at it. Okay, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. Seventh tradition. I showed you what I had for one of the groups that I do service for. Well, there's another one. We have this thing. We use seventh tradition. We use Venmo. The other options are you can use PayPal. It requires email addresses being sent. Zelle and Cash App are two other options. What would have to happen for this to work is the treasurer of the group would need to be willing to link to their account. If they want to transfer it to their checking account, be able to write checks later. And or if they want to do it virtual only, they can create a virtual only account and keep the money in the individual apps. Each one is different. Venmo is part of PayPal. It's the one that a lot of groups use, but other people are using Cash App and Zelle too. You'll find all three. As far as the area is concerned or the region is concerned, they probably would want to find a way to do and receive fund flow from all three of them. At the Eastern New York region, what we are doing is because we're a nonprofit, there is slightly different legal requirement. We are not able to use Venmo independently or Zelle or Cash App. They don't allow corporate linkage. So we have to use a service called Give Butter. There's other ones out there from what I understand, but I'm not too familiar with them, that allow donations to come in to a region or an area. If you're a 501c3, if you're not, you don't have to do it that way. And there is a charge involved with that. Using this service as a donations for groups, there is no charge. As long as you don't use a credit card and the people who are donating are linking it from their bank accounts, or and you don't do the express transfer. What it is the way that these places make the money is if you use a credit card, they charge 3% interest. So for every $1 that a person would donate to a group using their credit card, they would pay $1.03, the group would get $1. And there's a thing called express transfer when you're transferring it from bank account to bank account, which you don't need. Basically, it means the money shows up in the other person's account instantly. You don't need to do that. You can just allow it to be it's usually like 24, 48 hours, 72 hours till the money actually arrives in the account. The treasurer gets notification immediately. Matter of fact, there's one of my group treasurers in this room right now listening. And he gets the notification immediately that a donation was made. In about 48 hours, the money becomes available in the Venmo account. And then he can transfer it to his checking account to write a check, or he can, send it to area or region if they have a Venmo or a way to receive a Venmo payment. So that's the general Seventh tradition, way that it can be done. It's up to the groups to decide how they want to do it. Virtual meeting lists and BMLT. I showed you the virtual meeting list briefly from the region. I have one here. This was the Western Queens website where they have the Bronx meetings listed. As you can see, the meetings have the Venmo, the Zoom information, and the links here. And one of the things too, let me show you. Let me go back to ours. I have it. Yeah. Yeah. I'll go to the Nassau. Okay. The links that you guys have currently with the Bronx I don't know if I guess they probably don't have any passwords. But when you have the passwords in the meetings, I like to put these links on the virtual meeting list. They're longer, but they also link directly into the meeting. One click of a user comes to the website, they are in the meeting. They don't have to enter the password. The information is there. If they want to write down the Zoom ID and they want to write down the password, they can, write it down and come in manually. But if they're coming in and linking with this link, they don't have to enter the password. It'll bring them right into the meeting. I also always put the telephone number there. This is also a one-click link, so if they were on their smartphone and they clicked on this, they would dial in automatically. And as you see, all the meeting list information is there. If there's no Zoom link there, the meeting is, probably temporarily closed. And yeah, that's pretty much it with that. So back to this, like I said, I would use the longer links and I would get these meetings passwords if they don't have them. The way that we use this is we use a service called BMLT, Basic Meeting List something. I forget what the T stands for. But this service, the Greater New York region hosts it. They host the server. And we actually use their server too in the East New York region, since we were, we were together at one point. So I have access as the region admin on this account, and also there is an area representative for every single area in the East New York region. So Queens representative for the meeting list chair has access to the Queens meeting list data in BMLT. It's a simple login. As you can see, the information is there. There's new fields that were just added when we started doing this virtual thing, to put the phone number in, to put the link to the meeting, and then it gets displayed on the website if the website admin uses a special plugin, links to it. Like I said, I'm not going to get too techie about it, but having this access allows me, like I said, to schedule a meeting, like I said before, send an email, put it on the meeting list, and within about 15 minutes of talking to people and sending that email and setting up the Zoom meeting, putting it in BMLT, everything's done. And the meeting is on the meeting list. They have the host key. They're ready to go. I give them the shared links. So, like I said, this process kind of works very, very well right now. The only other thing that I didn't cover before I get the questions and answers is the cost. I should have sent this out, and I'll send it to the website committee, and they could forward it to people or bring it to the area. But I put out regular reports about the service. And basically down here in this paragraph, 49 meetings when this is running 40 groups. I'm getting a 20% discount on Zoom. There's a coupon code that I use. I don't know how long it's going to last, but basically for the first month in April, we only paid $58.80 for, I think we had like four hosts. No, it was 5 hosts, I think, at the end of the month. And then I got a 6th host. The total for May, $71.55. The normal price for that would have been $89, basically $90 for 6 hosts, about $15 a host. When you break this down by week, works out to about $16 and change, and then I'm running, like I said, 49 meetings a week. That works out to 34 cents for a 2 to 3 hour meeting. So if these groups wanted to pay rent or pay 7th tradition, be fully self-supporting, $2 for 4 to 5 meetings a month. Like that's normally what a weekly meeting is. A daily meeting would be a little more, but still would be pennies. So that's the real cost to the area once you guys set this up. And like I said, you don't need to grow the account bigger than it needs to be initially. Keep the cost down. They prorate everything. So when I expand the account next month, hopefully, if the motion gets approved, the cost will go up a little bit, but it's going to go up to 50, 60, 75 cents a meeting, depending on how large of an account we get. That's still pennies, $4 a month. So this is a very efficient way to spend fellowship dollars, to manage the resources, and to get the groups up and running, carrying the message. So that's what was important to me at the beginning of this whole thing. Like I said, a lot of people weren't technically inclined. It's very difficult for the general user or person to do this stuff, to set up their own Zoom account, to start hosting, to figure all these things out. I figured them out, gave peak groups a platform to come in. The only policy I had was simple. If they were a previously existing group prior to COVID, shutting us down back in March, all they had to do was call me and go, yeah, I'm the GSR or I'm the chairperson for this group. I want to get it set up, and that's it. And I didn't alter their times, and I didn't alter their scheduling of meetings. My policy was, if you're an existing meeting, I will schedule the meeting for your existing time slot and your existing day, within reason. If they wanted to shift it like a half an hour, 15 minutes, I did do that on a few occasions. But in general, there was a meeting that came to me and said, hey, yeah, we run a 10 a.m. meeting. We want to run it 7 days a week. And I was like, well, I'll schedule you for the one meeting you had on Sunday at 10 a.m., but you need to go to your area and get recognized like any other group would get recognized in our normal way of doing things, normal policy. A group goes to an area, asks to get recognized, asks for a starter kit, and then when the group gets recognized by the area, then they get put on, they get the group starter kit, and they get listed on the meeting list, and all that stuff. So I followed that same general rule of thumb. So as to how, like, who gets what. Well, we have an existing list of groups that are our groups, for Bronx area in this case. So you just go by that. And then if a new group wants to be a virtual only group, we've had that since. There's new groups that have popped up that are virtual only. They didn't exist before this whole thing started. They went to their area, they asked for recognition, they got it, they got listed on the meeting list, and they were either, I think one group is using our service, and then the other group, they created their own because they were like a 7-day-a-week nightly meeting in Queens. But yeah, that was the simple way that I went about it, and it's been very successful. I had, as I've expressed to the website committee, the technical end of this and helping set it up and get you guys, up and running. I'll help you do that because once that's all done, it's a one-shot deal. Once the Zoom account is created and the interlinking is done, and I teach, whoever how to do that, then all the groups have to do is call and get a meeting scheduled in Zoom, and get that meeting ID information, get it posted on the virtual meeting list, maybe a little bit of training, and you guys could be up and running with every single group that previously existed before this, if you want to go that far. It's all up to who's willing to serve at those group levels. You need trusted servants to step up, and I've been happy to say that we have a lot of people who stepped up out of their comfort zone to do this stuff. And like I said, once they started doing it, they realized it's not that hard. So I think that pretty much covers all of the webinar stuff that I wanted to say. So I haven't been paying attention to the questions and answers. I haven't seen any questions in the chat. But that's the part we're up to. So.
Okay. So can I stop the recording now, Mike?
Yeah. Stop the recording, and then we'll get into the question and answer period.